Hey there, it's Steve from Serious Keto, and this is the Not So Serious Keto video podcast. I'm going to start this podcast off similarly to last week, talking about my schedule this week, because there are some similarities to last week, but it gets even more so. So, like last week, this week on Monday and Tuesday, both of my grandsons, Calvin and Colton, are going to be over. That means no filming. Wednesday, we're having the ceiling painted in a big chunk of our house. I know this is totally not keto, but just giving you the update, bear with me. So we have sort of an open type of a house. It's not that big, so to make it feel bigger, when I designed it, I wanted to make sure that there was a lot of open area. So really, the foyer, the hallway to the bedrooms, the great room, the dining area, the kitchen, they all share the same ceiling, and we're having that painted. So that basically means no recording Wednesday, probably no recording Thursday, because we're going to be putting all kinds of things back in place, hopefully, and getting everything back in order. So it's all going to come down to how quickly I can film some things today, as I'm recording this on Sunday, and potentially maybe a little something in and around when Calvin and Colton are here. So tonight, I'm probably going to be filming my dinner. And I've never made this recipe before. I've never eaten this particular cut of meat before. So this is kind of, I wouldn't necessarily say dangerous, but it's something I don't generally do. In fact, almost none of my cooking videos are first run. Usually I do multiple trials before I get to the video because I want to make sure that it turns out. I want to account for anything that might go wrong. Like the Denver omelet green pepper rings from last week. Simple recipe, right? The number of trials that it took to figure out why was the egg leaking out from the ring and figuring out the ideal temperature, that took like 3 trials right there on a simple dish. So tonight, what I'm making and gonna film, and maybe I'll release it regardless on Friday, even if it doesn't turn out, it'll be a lessons learned video. But I'm going to make braised beef cheeks. I've heard that beef cheek meat is just super tender, super succulent, wonderful for braising. So I'm going to give that a whirl tonight. Fingers crossed. I'm kind of excited about that. I love the idea of working with a new cut of meat. So that could wind up being Friday's cooking video. Wednesday, I'm very excited about the review that I'm going to do because this is a product that I beta tested and gave some feedback to the company, and it is finally ready to release. So that's my little teaser for Wednesday. But now on with the podcast, and let's see what we've got here. Oh, one of the things I've been talking about the last couple of podcasts are a couple of books I'm reading. One is Lies I Taught in Medical School by Dr. Robert Lufkin. I finished that. Good book. I'm going to hold off on the review until I can compare and contrast it with Lies My Doctor Told Me by Dr. Ken Berry. And I'm deliberately kind of reading through it slowly. The book by Dr. Ken Berry, the chapters are fairly short. It would be easy, I think, to pretty much rip right through it. But I kind of like to read a chapter or 2 a day so that I can reflect on it a little bit. Otherwise, I'm afraid I'm going to get information overload and start discombobulating some of the information that he shares in it. But I can tell you, similar to Dr. Lufkin's book, Lies My Doctor Told Me, great book. And I mean, I'm already a fan of Dr. Berry, but I am more of a fan of him since I started reading this book. It's good stuff. One of the things that I'm going to talk about in terms of these similarities between the 2 books, and it's also something that I've touched on in the past in some of my podcasts, and that is the various studies that come out and say, this is bad for you, or this is linked to cancer, or whatever. This will destroy your gut microbiome. And both authors talk about how studies, these aren't free. I mean, you probably are aware of this. They are paid for by someone. And usually that someone is big. Big government, big food, big pharma, big agriculture. And as a result, the conclusions that come out of this study tend to be beneficial for those organizations. Now, I'm not saying this is straight up bribery, that they're paying for specific results, but these studies happen, And then what happens is they write out a long paper on it, and then at the end there's a little summary to it. And very often, as Dr. Berry points out in his book, and I think Dr. Lufkin as well, the summary doesn't really correspond to the data that was discovered as a part of this particular study. And people don't typically read through the entire study, the entire paper. They jump to the conclusion, they read the conclusion, maybe they only read the headline, and they base their decision on that and, mold their story around it. So then what further complicates matters, and let me back up for a second. Dr. Berry is he gives a lot of, I don't know what I would call it. He's not judgmental about other doctors that do some of the things that continue these lies. He understands they're busy. We're busy. We're all busy. And we have so much information coming from so many different directions now in this internet age that all we do is we read a summary, or worse, we read a headline. So the media will grab one of these studies and they'll take that summary and condense it down even further and just give us a headline. And then we read the headline and we say, blank is dangerous. I'll say tomatoes. Tomatoes are dangerous. You should never eat tomatoes. And I think the most classic instance of this, and probably the worst violation of science in this, was the 7-country study by Ancel Keys. And both Dr. Lufkin and Dr. Berry talk about that. And basically what it was a case of extreme cherry picking of data. So Dr. Ancel Keys took data on heart disease and cholesterol intake, and there were 22 countries he studied. 7 fit his hypothesis. 1/3 of the countries fit his hypothesis. So he eliminated the others so that he could get a nice line through these 7 countries showing that the increased consumption of dietary fat and cholesterol leads to cardiovascular disease. And that was the beginning of the mess that we are in America, especially with the standard American diet and some of the dietary recommendations that are out there. But it's one of those things where as you read this, it really, truly should make you skeptical of any study, any headline that you read about something being healthy, something not being healthy. And this isn't even getting into my background in statistics, because most of these studies, I look at the data, I look at the sample sizes, and I look at the way they use percentages and medians and things like that, and it is an absolute bastardization of statistics. If we go back to cholesterol and statins, one of the big things that's trumpeted is that statins are 36% more likely to prevent a cardiovascular incident than a placebo. But it's a relative stat. So if you look at it, the people that were on the placebo had like a 1.11% chance of a cardiovascular incident. The people who were on a statin had a 0.86%. So you subtract, I think these are the numbers. So you subtract the 0.86 from the 1.1, and then you divide that number by the 0.86 and you get 36%. Wow, what a big difference. The reality is the difference in absolute terms is probably less than 0.3. There we go. I had to do the math in my head. Haven't done that in a while. 0.3%, not 36%. So there's all kinds of weirdness that goes on with these studies. The other element that's big is correlation versus causation. So sometimes you see things together, but that doesn't necessarily mean one of them caused the other or the other caused the one. It could be another factor that just wasn't accounted for. And I mentioned this in a podcast probably a year or more ago on correlation between different things, different foods, different activities, and cancer. And one of the things that fell into the top tier of correlations with cancer is carpentry. So being a carpenter increases your risk of cancer. That would be the takeaway. That would be the headline. But if you think about it, think about carpenters. I know there are a number of carpenters that maybe have small shops, woodworking shops, maybe it's in their basement, maybe they've got a little business, maybe they've got it out in a shed in the back. But most of the carpenters, I think, at least the ones that I've seen, are ones that are working on houses, either building houses, doing repairs, building decks, things like that. And pretty much all of them I see are smoking, drinking like Mountain Dew or Coke or Pepsi. Usually it's Mountain Dew, it seems like, at least around here. And then they run off to lunch and they bring back some McDonald's. So here you are, you're packing all of these pretty much toxic type of food items and putting them into your body, or chemicals, or, in the case of cigarettes, the tobacco, the tar, the carcinogens that are associated with that. So it's not that carpentry is causing cancer, it's some other activities that they tend to be engaged in. And ultimately, what frustrates me about all of this is it kind of turns everybody into, and I use the terms often, some of you don't like it when I use these, but the keto police, the ingredient police, people that just want to tell other people what to do, how to live, what's wrong with what they're doing, what's wrong with how they're eating, rather than just tending to their own selves, which is what I try and do. So to me, whether I'm going to consume a given food type or ingredient or something like that is going to be based on my experience. So when I say I don't advocate for seed oils, I don't like seed oils, I don't like canola oil, soybean oil, things like that, that's my decision. Now, I think there's a lot of evidence out there that supports that decision, but my decision is purely based on how it makes me feel. I get inflammation. I feel it in my elbows. I feel it in my lower back, sometimes my knuckles, sometimes my knees. And that, for me, is the reason why I don't do it. But I wanted to bring this up as a topic. It kind of went way longer than I thought it was going to. That started with one of the things that I really like about both of these books and kind of morphed into something that I get to deal with an awful lot, probably more than most of you, because I get all these comments all the time, and comments are great, but comments about how, oh, this is bad, or this is bad, or this is toxic, this is poison, and really, everything is. If you Google it, you can find anything. Google, is water dangerous? Yes, yes it is. Google, is water good for you? Yes, yes it is. Google, is red wine dangerous for you? Yes, yes it is. Google, is red wine good for you? Again, yes it is. There is information or misinformation out there to support whatever any of us want to believe. And it's only gotten worse, I think, with the 24-hour news cycle, the internet. It's kind of the Wild West out there. It makes me pine for my childhood in the 70s, when usually there was only like a couple of things to be afraid of. And the big thing for me, see if you remember this, those of you who are children of the 70s, killer bees. Remember that? Killer bees, they're migrating up from Mexico. They can just sting and sting and sting. I was terrified of killer bees. Those were the days. So that last topic kind of took on a life of its own. I had no intent of it stretching out that long. So that leaves only a few more things left on my list here for the podcast. The first of which, let me just summarize that last chunk. I will probably by next week, worst case, 2 podcasts from now, I will have reviews of both of the books, the Dr. Lufkin and the Dr. Berry book. I'll tell you, is there one I prefer over the other, or is there one that I would recommend to a particular type of person versus the other? That'll be coming soon, and I'm really looking forward to it because they're both great books. If you want to get a head start, I'll link to both of them down in the description below. The next topic I want to cover is what kept us from doing keto sooner. I think most of us that are here, myself included, love keto. I've been doing it for 6 years now. I see no reason to stop. I appreciate every day the way that I feel. And I also appreciate the changes that have occurred in my taste buds. I don't really have any desire to eat sweets anymore. And it seems like the longer I'm on keto, the less interest I have in even fruits and vegetables. And I wasn't much of a fruit or vegetables person before. I liked potatoes, French fries, and things like that. But, I didn't go real crazy on vegetables. And fruit, I liked apples and berries, but that was about it. And fortunately, berries are high enough fiber that in limited amounts we can have them on keto. So sometimes I'll get some blueberries and I'll mash them up and mix them in with some full-fat yogurt as sort of a dessert. But that's about as sweet as I like. But kind of went off topic there again. Let's pull it on back. So why didn't I go keto sooner? And when I think about that, and maybe you have the same feelings, there's like a little bit of regret. Like, oh, I wish I would have done this sooner. I wish I would have known about it sooner. But we can't let ourselves feel that way. We should just be happy that we eventually learned enough about keto and learned that it was worth trying, and we did it and we felt the results. But I think about the reasons why I didn't do it sooner. I had done Atkins back probably right around age 30. It was pretty close, somewhere 30, 32. And I lost a good chunk of weight over the course of, I think I did it 6 weeks, 8 weeks, something like that is all. And then I stopped. And the reason I stopped was twofold. Part of it was there weren't the low carb, keto friendly, or purely keto recipes, and some of the products and ideas that have come up, a lot from the keto creator community, that just didn't exist back then, which would have been 26, 27 years ago. Keto was basically, I was eating a lot of burger patties with some cheese and some bacon and some mayo on it. That was it. And maybe a fried egg, which now sounds pretty awesome. But at the time, it felt so weird to me. And I started saying the things that I think a lot of people say when we tell them that we're doing keto. They say, I could never do keto because I can't give up insert thing. And I think I had the full list. I can't give up beer. I mean, beer was part of my identity, really. I loved beer. I loved I was a home brewer, and I kegged my own beer, and I had a kegerator. I generally had about 4 kegs of beer on tap at any time. And I saw that as part of my identity. The people that I hung out with, my friends, were all heavy beer drinkers. There was I couldn't imagine not drinking, and especially not drinking beer. Eating, breads, pastas, pizzas, all of those things. I couldn't imagine life without them. And I think I'll talk more about the addictive nature of carbs, and especially highly processed carbs like bread, at a future podcast. It might even be its own solo topic sort of thing. But those are the main reasons that kept me from doing keto. For a long time, I knew that what I was doing, whatever I was doing in life, wasn't good for my body. I didn't feel good. I didn't look good. I was heavy. I got out of breath when I was trying to tie my shoes, just kind of trying to lean over my belly. I kept living that life because I told myself that I couldn't give up these certain things, the bread, the beer, the pasta, etc. But we can. And you should be proud of yourself for doing it. But I'd like to know, let me know down in the comments below, what was the biggest hurdle for you? What was the thing that prevented you for the longest time from going keto or low carb? I'm genuinely curious to see the list and how much it differs from my own. So, like I said, down in the comments below, please let me know. But that is going to be it for this video. Like I said, bear with me this week. It could be tough in terms of getting all the videos out on time. I'm going to do my best though. So as always, thanks for spending a little bit of time with me this morning. Thanks for the interaction in the comments. Thanks for listening. And thanks for watching.